Welcome to Marriage IQ, the podcast for the intelligent spouse.
I'm Dr. Heidi Hastings.
And I'm Dr. Scott Hastings.
We are two doctors, two researchers, two spouses, two lovers, and two incredibly different human beings coming together for one purpose: to transform the stinky parts of your marriage into scintillating ones, using intelligence mixed with a little fun. Welcome back, all you amazing people. We're so honored to have you back for another exciting episode of Marriage IQ.
I love it.
So as a marriage and family researcher and an adjunct professor teaching family stress and coping, I've been looking at the impacts of stress on marriages for the past few years.
So have you been doing that because of personal experience?
In part, yes.
Do I create stress in your life, Dr. Hastings?
Most of the time you just create joy in my life, pure joy.
All right, well.
But there are a few times.
Just wondering.
I'm sure I also create some stress in your life. We wanted to do an episode on stress, and to be honest with you, we started recording this episode last week, but
we got too stressed out.
We got too stressed out. And we said, we're bagging it. We'll come back to it next week.
And here we are.
But we thought we'd share the story with you. Yes. Because experiential learning seems to be a better teacher than book learning. So here's how it went down.
Tell us a story.
I'll tell you a story. So I'd been out of town for several days helping our daughter and her husband get their new apartment set up before she started grad school. And while I was gone, our son called, letting us know the good news that he'd tentatively received an offer for his dream job. This place that he would be working was about 24 hours away, and they wanted him to start the following Monday. So there were very few days to make all of this work. And they told him that several things had to happen in order for him to be cleared to work. So it was a little tentative. Is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? We didn't know. There was a holdup somewhere on the job during those days, and so we kept altering plans. Okay, we're going to leave this day. Okay, we're going to leave this day. And we had to keep altering plans on how to get him there. Ultimately, he got the call that he was cleared, but we had 1 hour to get on the road to make our plans happen.
I sense the stress building.
Well, it was to an extent. I had to change plans. Instead of driving the whole 24 hours with him, I just decided to drive 12 hours, which at least would help us see if his new old car, new to him, would be okay on the freeways and if it would function properly, and it gave me time to talk with him. So it was a good thing, but also wanted to make sure that he had another driver there with him as well. So we had 1 hour. He loaded the car. We got on the road, and it was a really wonderful drive. We had great conversations. Everything went well. We did hit some rainstorms in the dark going through canyons.
No problem.
We survived it. It was all good. The next day started out really good too. It was hard though. We stopped to see our dear friends. It was this special young couple who's faced so much stress and adversity as this strong, amazing woman has been battling cancer, and she's very young. They have a young family, and she's at the end of this battle with cancer, and that was really hard to deal with, hard to see. And barring a miracle, what was really hard was to say goodbye.
Yeah. It was tough.
Yeah. But we got on the road, we're off, and Hunter was going to drop me at the airport in Denver. But within 20 minutes of leaving their house, we had our tire blow out on his car. Luckily, we were not going super fast, and we were able to pull off onto a dirt road. But it took the tow truck a couple of hours to pick up the car and get it to the tire store, so I missed my flight. We ended up having to buy $800 worth of tires and learned that the piece of metal that I thought was just rolling around in his car because he likes to pick up weird things sometimes was actually the key to the lug nuts to get the tires off the car.
Yeah.
So after sitting there 3.5 hours, they're like, it's going to take us even longer to get these off. We're going to have to weld them off or something. And it's going to cost you a whole bunch more money because I had moved the lug nut key out of the car, not knowing what it was. And so I missed the next flight going out because Hunter had to drive at least 8 hours that night to get to our daughter's house as a stopping point. We didn't have them do the alignment on the car. That was a choice I made to save some time so he would get there before midnight. Eventually, he dropped me at the Denver airport, and he got on the road, and we both got to our destinations about 1:30 in the morning. So I didn't have very much sleep and hadn't slept much for several days. We came to our interview that we were doing that day for our podcast, and the technology totally flubbed up, wouldn't work. So we had to scrap everything and just record it from our computer, which was frustrating. The second episode we tried to record, we thought we would just improvise because I had gotten back so late. We didn't have the normal time that we have to research and prepare. That was the first take of this episode. That doesn't happen very well on very little sleep. So we scrapped the recording and went to a room and just started planning for the next episode. But when I got there, I learned of massive problems with my social media manager. I had a speech to prepare for that evening, and to top it all off, our son had gone to the tire store in the town where our daughter lives, and they told him that he'd ruined the tires by driving that 8 hours without an alignment. And so
you need 2 new tires that you just bought yesterday.
Right. So I was feeling stressed, not only physically, mentally, but also emotionally.
So did you notice any physical signs of these intense emotions?
Yeah, I did. All I could do was cry. In fact, I was sobbing. I can't remember doing that for a really long time, but I felt so out of control. And I guess even earlier when I was sitting in the airport, I just felt numb, like I can't function. I need to be planning the episode and I can't even function. So stress really impacted me on 2 ends of the spectrum. One, feeling nothing, and the other just being over emotional. And let me add to that, I felt heaviness in my chest and had a really bad headache. So physically, those were some of the things I felt. And then emotionally, I think I felt angry with you because you weren't supporting me in the way that I felt that I needed, and really angry with my social media manager for making some really big mess ups.
So, Heidi, you're probably referring to that I didn't say anything to you.
Right.
I was quiet,
Right.
silent. I said nothing. I think sometimes it's hard to know what to say. And over the many years of being with you, I've learned that sometimes saying something is not a great thing to do.
And sometimes it is.
Sometimes it is.
A 50-50 chance.
A 50-50 chance.
Getting it right.
I have learned that the times when I don't know what to say, I do want to be close to you. Sometimes it's touching you and sometimes it's not. It's not that I was rejecting you.
Right.
It's just that sometimes it's very difficult for me to interpret on the fly what to do.
Well, and I think at the time, because I was so flooded in so many different ways, I was expecting you to read my mind. But ultimately, later I figured out I need to ask you for exactly what I need in that moment.
Yeah, my ESP-o-meter is in the shop. It's been broken for a while. So how did these physical reactions impact your ability to make decisions or behave as you would have preferred?
That's a really good question, because when we are stressed out, we do sometimes do or say things that we wish that we hadn't. I think I was impatient with you to some extent. I don't think that I could speak very coherently when we were planning and recording our podcast, and that was frustrating to me too. I couldn't write my speech for that evening, and so all of those throughout the day either caused me to be overly emotional, overly reactive, or separate from you and just stew in my thoughts. So, yeah, I wish that I had handled it more like I know and like I teach others to handle it, but it took me a while to wrap my brain around that.
Okay. So you aren't perfect, but
I'm
you
not perfect.
but you did stand back and evaluate.
Right.
So what is stress? Is it bad? Heidi just told us about a story of stress, a very vulnerable moment. If I don't sit there and think about it, I'll blurt out, of course it's bad. Why wouldn't stress be bad? I don't like how I feel when I'm stressed out. We all know the physiologic symptoms, right? Heart pounding, sweating, tremor, sometimes abdominal pain. In Heidi's case, headache, chest pain, sometimes even some nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. We know the psychological symptoms, a general sense of unease or worry or anxiousness, maybe even feelings of impending doom. I have stress at my job. If only my boss or my coworkers or colleagues would do this better or that better, then I wouldn't have this stress. I have stress at home. My spouse stresses me out. My children stress me out. Why am I the one who has to always be responsible? If I didn't have so many demands, decisions, and deadlines, life would be so painless, peaceful, and perfect.
Those are some interesting thought processes going on.
I'm painting a picture
some
here.
of which we both adopt at sometimes,
Right.
at some points.
So, and we want to be totally upfront here with everyone. Like, we deal with stress too. Like, this is who we are as a human. Let's talk about, speaking of humans, the physiology of stress.
Okay.
So it starts with the brain, the hypothalamus. The very deep part of the brain releases a hormone that stimulates the pituitary gland, also in the brain, to release another hormone, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. And that then stimulates these very tiny glands that sit on top of your kidneys, called the adrenal glands, to produce adrenaline and cortisol.
That sounds really impressive. You are so intelligent.
These hormones create what we know as fight or flight responses as part of the sympathetic pathway.
Okay.
There's the parasympathetic and the sympathetic pathway. This is what causes that fast heart rate, the sweating, the dry mouth, the palpitations, tremor, fast breathing, tunnel vision, and all of our rational thought processes are shut down. There's different types of stress, right? There's eustress. That is the type of stress that is required for us. That is normal physiologic stress. So our
What do you
heart,
mean required?
Okay, our heart was built to withstand stress. If we don't exercise, if we don't push our heart to have to work for its oxygen, it will deteriorate, okay? So there has to be some level of exercise stress. That's why exercise is so vital to living a long, healthy life. Walking, running, biking, some sort of that type of stress on the heart.
So does it also need other types of stress, not just physical stress? I know you said it's built to handle stress.
Well, to increase the demand for oxygen.
So as we're feeling stress and we have these physiological responses of like hyperventilating or our heart pounding more wildly, that also is what our heart needs to stay in shape.
Well, I would say, so the type you're talking about is the distress, which we'll definitely get into. But this eustress is a normal, healthy, physiologic
Okay.
demand on the heart.
Okay.
A dear intelligent spouse, Here's the dirty little secret. The absence of stress does not create a scintillating life. Let me repeat. The absence of stress does not, cannot, and will not create a scintillating life. Our entire societal culture has been trained as a goal to eliminate any possible conceivable problem that may arise. Think about it. There are roughly 5 million new businesses started every year in the U.S., every one of them created to solve a problem that the consumer, that's you, have. Good advertisers and marketers carefully discover, dissect, and then amplify your pain points. And by so doing, they set themselves up as the superhero who then swoops down to save the day. They rescue you from whatever pain you're experiencing. That is, after you have forked over the requisite cash for their superhero good or service. Stress is not only good for you, it's essential to living the scintillating life that always seems to evade your strenuous efforts to attain it. Why is this? And what if I have too much stress? You say that stress is essential, but what about too much stress? Isn't that bad? Well, dear intelligent spouse, welcome to the art of living a balanced life. So let's talk about distress now.
Okay.
A more insidious form of stress caused by chronic stress called distress. It can put your health at risk.
Okay.
It can increase your risk for chronic headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, cancer, and death. Chronic distress causes burnout. But, interestingly, it's all based on how we subjectively perceive our stress.
Wow. So it sounds like we need some insight into
Stress,
our own thoughts about the stress.
right, stress is subjective. It's not objective. It's what we tell ourselves.
Interesting.
So an article by Keller in 2012 that looked at the levels of stress and the perception that stress leads to detrimental health effects. So higher death rates were found among those who perceived high stress levels in themselves and that stress itself was harmful. That increased their death by over 40%.
So let me see if I understand what you're saying. If I think I'm stressed out constantly, chronically,
Yes.
then I'm going to die sooner.
Yes, if you perceive yourself as being stressed out all the time, even though you may live a life completely equal to someone else who does not feel stressed out all the time.
Interesting.
The story that you tell yourself, your
About our
perception of stress directly leads to your mortality rate. In this case, over 40%. And another study by Anders Pryor in 2016 looked at how chronic perceived stress was strongly associated with death. Those with the highest perceived levels had a 50% increased chance of dying versus those with the lowest perceived stress levels.
Oh, wait, we all have a 100% chance of dying. So explain what you mean
Well,
by
all
this study.
things being equal.
They died sooner?
They
younger?
died sooner and younger, yes. When they equaled everything else out, age and other disease conditions, other lifestyle choices, when they put them in all together and matched them,
Okay.
there was a 50% chance. The first study was about 45%. This had 50.
Well, and it makes me think perhaps part of that is that believing that we are really stressed out makes it more likely for us to have diseases. Is that part of that, do you think?
Right, right.
Okay.
In fact, I was going to say chronic creates more of a risk of death than does high cholesterol. Think about that.
So chronic stress or thinking we have chronic stress?
Well, it's all perceived, right? In the end, stress is all perceived. And so if we perceive that we have chronic stress,
Which is very normal and okay in some very, very tragic or difficult situations. Right?
Well, again, it's what do we tell ourselves?
Okay.
That could be normal, but what they're getting at is the story that we tell ourselves. If we're chronically stressed, then all of these things are greatly increased, including death.
So what stresses you out? What stresses me out? For all of us, we have external factors like financial pressures, job loss, or being dissatisfied with our jobs, having health issues, in-laws, extended family dynamics, children, differences in parenting, moving. There are a lot of things that can be external factors for our stress, but we also have internal factors. Imposter syndrome, comparisons, mental illness, a tendency to catastrophize everything, communication breakdowns within our family, unmet expectations, or doubts and fears. In addition to those, look at relationship stressors. How does your spouse or the stinky parts in your marriage stress you out? Despite research showing that marriage offers many health benefits, there's some recent research by Dr. Rosie Shrout of Purdue University that shows that marital stress can increase risk factors, like you said, for disease development, for the severity of an illness, and even accelerated biological aging. I wonder if that's why I have more wrinkles than some other people, just the amount of family stress that we've had. In fact, other research calls for marriage to be treated as a public health priority because it's so important for marriages to be stable that if they're not, it really impacts health, which impacts employment, which impacts a lot of things. That's the bad news. But on the other hand, research also shows that our spouses can be the most effective in helping support us in times of great stress. I want to share with you an analogy to help you understand stress a little bit better.
Okay.
Comparing the process of making pre-stressed concrete to stress in marriage is a really interesting analogy. So let me share with you what that looks like. In pre-stressed concrete, stress is deliberately introduced into the material before it's subjected to external heavy loads. So essentially, pre-stressing is a way to preemptively manage stress to ensure that the structure performs better under heavy loads. Just as with concrete, managing stress in marriage and family life involves strategies to address and mitigate the negative impacts before they become overwhelming.
Well, it sounds to me like maybe they should plan on it. I mean, that's what they do in this the pre-stressed they intentionally plan on doing it.
We're going to take some preventative measures for when that pops up, we know how to handle it. Preventative measures might include having open communications, couples councils that we've talked about, setting boundaries to protect our relationship and our time with each other, listening to Marriage IQ, learning to reframe stress in a way that allows you to see that you stress, like you were talking about, is a good thing, not a bad thing.
So let me put a little research spin on this here. It's a study by Jeremy Jameson. The subjects in the study who were able to perceive the stress as a normal physiologic response, objectively, neutrally, were protected from the deterioration of health that we talked about previously that would otherwise be found in those who had high stress levels and were not able to reframe it. So in other words, the people who were able to talk about what was happening in their body, observing it neutrally. I'm feeling my heart rate go up. I'm feeling my respiration go up. They're practicing mindfulness. And they're also feeling this is a normal reaction in my body. When I'm feeling this is normal reaction to stress, and this my body is awesome. It's doing the right thing. They're practicing the what and not the why, just observing what's happening. We talked about that in our autopsy episode.
I'm certain that you could start practicing mindfulness when you're in the middle of a really stressful circumstance. But how much better would it be to preemptively start practicing mindfulness so
Right.
when you are
Yes.
faced with this, you've built up those hours and hours and hours of practice, just like being at a gym,
Right.
that then allows you to navigate the whole situation in a more healthy and less stressful circumstance. That's really a good study. To be able to navigate stress, we have to know, first of all, that both daily stress and chronic stress or distress are inevitable within our lifetime and within our relationship because we are human.
Yes.
Scott, you and I strongly advocate for protecting the marriage first. And this is another way that we can manage and maintain those really stressful situations in our lives. Think of it as the instructions given when you get on an airplane to put on your own max oxygen mask first so that you can take care of your children if you are sitting by children. Intentionally protecting the marriage first is vital, because if you put your children or your work or other things first and the marriage crumbles under massive amounts of stress, it's going to cause issues for everyone. If we can keep the relationships stable and healthy and functioning, then our other relationships in all areas are going to work better.
Sounds like a great thing to have as a cornerstone, intentionality.
That's exactly right. We can develop resilience through stress prevention and management techniques through the research-based concepts and tools that we teach right here on Marriage IQ.
Yeah, that reminds me of this TEDx talk on YouTube by Kelly McGonigal.
Oh, I've seen that too. I love it.
It's great. I recommend it to all of our listeners. It has like 33 million views or something. How stress is actually good for us and how to find that balance between good stress and pathologic stress. Really fascinating. Yeah.
Into practice.
So, Heidi, going back to the story you shared in the beginning about your stressful week last week,
Okay.
let's frame it in terms of what we've discussed today.
Okay.
What lessons did you learn?
Well, that's a really good question. In reviewing that very, very stressful time, I learned I need sleep. I'd realized that I'd gone on 4 or 5 hours of sleep for probably a couple of weeks. And that was starting to deplete my ability to handle stress very well. I realized I need to eat. I get hangry, hungry plus angry.
What, you? Never.
I've learned that I need to set boundaries.
Okay.
I can't always balance my roles as a wife, as a mother, as a business owner, as a consumer, or a friend perfectly. Once I got control of my emotions, I was able to ask for what I needed from you. I needed you to hug me.
Okay.
I needed you to touch me. I needed you to talk to me. In some of the things I had that weekend, I was able to simplify my contributions in some of the roles.
Okay.
I prayed for strength and for increased capacity in the things that I couldn't change. And I learned that I can say no to some things if I need to, or put them on hold till another time. Rather than dealing with the stuff with my social media manager, I just said, put everything on hold.
Okay.
I can't deal with this right now. And I didn't come back to it for 2 or 3 days. So I learned to have grace for myself. Ultimately, I determined that my most important priorities were to support and connect deeply with my children in these really important life transitions that are going on for them, and be kind to those that I interacted with, even though I had really high stress. I learned to reframe my thoughts for the positive. My goodness, this was amazing. I didn't have a tire blowout while we were in the rain in the canyon the night before. Oh my goodness, I think I can reschedule another flight. So I called and they said, sure enough, we'll do a change for you on that. Luckily, we budget, and so we have an emergency fund to help with buying those tires, and
Yep.
that was a huge blessing. Why was I feeling stress? It was okay. We had
That's what that money's for.
money right there to help with that. And we've been saving up for many months. So it was great. And lastly, I learned to advocate for what I need, to ask for what I need. So with that, like I said, some of my biggest stress this week has been linked to growing our tribe through social media. Social media, for any of you who know me, I'm not good at it. So I'm learning and I'm trying to access resources to help me. So I'm going to ask all of you for a little bit of help today because I think that will help my stress. Well, all of you just take a moment to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and then share our podcast with others that you think could benefit from it. Leave us comments on whatever platform you listen to for your podcasts. We have really big plans for Marriage IQ. We have a lot of ideas expanding in a lot of different areas, but we need to build our tribe before we can start on any of these. We want to bring more love into this world. We want to help couples have solid foundations, have scintillating relationships, because that helps them be better parents. That helps them be better neighbors. That helps them be better employees. And if we can just spread love in the world by working on marriages, that's our contribution.
So thinking about certain things this week, let's come up with some personal solutions you can do, okay? Think about certain things or people in your life that create stress for you. How can you allow that feeling of stress or anxiety, whatever you want to call it, allow that feeling to just flow through you?
Ooh.
Recognize that it's there and then flow out. Practice it. Identify the trigger. Allow those negative feelings to flow. Then just flow out as if you're a fish with some gills.
You know, I've actually found that to be really helpful. I think that's a good practice.
And then with your spouse, your marriage relationship this week, let's sit with your spouse. Share with them what you found from your personal experience. Watch the video. It's a YouTube video, How Stress is Killing Us by Thijs Lonsbach. He's a Dutch psychologist. And then watch the Kelly McGonigal video on YouTube, How to Make Stress Your Friend.
We can put links to both of those in our social media.
And I like what Thijs Lonsbach said. You either deal with stress or stress deals with you. He wrote a book, Crazy Busy, Keeping Sane in a Stressful World. So bringing this all back to identity, intentionality, insight, intimacy, let's look at how we are being created to make meaning as our identity. Looking at stress as purpose. What is happening to me right now? Being intentional about what is happening inside my body when I experience stress. Insight. Looking at our stress from another viewpoint, another perspective, popping out of our emotions. And intimacy as a natural, organic outgrowth of all these things. Next week's question. Now that we've learned about stress and the meaning we attach to it, how do we apply this in our lives using practical principles and expert advice? You'll find out next week.
So stay tuned, everybody.
We love you.
Have a great week.
And remember, the intelligent spouse knows that to change from a stinky to a scintillating marriage first requires a change in themselves.
Thank you all for tuning in to Marriage IQ. We hope today's episode has sparked some wonderful thoughts and brought you valuable insights. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. If you are interested in more information on this topic or to learn more about what we do, check out our website, drheidihastings.com. And if you get the chance, we'd love to have you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. It really helps us get the word out about Marriage IQ, and we appreciate your support. Thanks again for listening. Keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time on another exciting episode of Marriage IQ.